Questions have been answered, but of course, some mysteries still stand strong. And stick around in particular for how I think that commercial is a foreshadowing of what we will be seeing in the series later on. I got a pretty airtight theory as to how that plays out with everything. What is up, my people? It's your single player hero here with another review of Wandavision. We're on episode 6 now. I'm gonna go a bit backwards and start with what we saw last, which was Wanda using her powers to expand the region of the Hex, engulfing some of the people that you see outside in the sword facility, including Darcy. So it's a pretty big deal for a couple of reasons. Throughout the series now, several times we've heard mention as to how this all came about, right? The Hex. And Wanda in particular, when asked, not even having any recollection of how it all happened. It came up again today when Pietro and Wanda had a sit down in the town square and started talking. And she mentioned that all she remembered was being alone and scared. And then all of a sudden, it happened. So it's very strange to see that she has no recollection, right, of doing these things, but we see that she in fact is the cause of it, right? She is the one, she herself puts a pause on everything. She freezes everything going on inside of Westview, which is a very cool moment to see. Especially there was one part where everyone stops and there's like one of those like air figures that like float in the air, and they sway and move in the air, and that thing stopped as well. So that was a really cool like effect moment right there. So it'll be very interesting to see if what happens, what recollection she has of that in the next episode. Because if it starts off and she's kind of like unaware of it, right? Then that'll be very interesting. It may very well play to the theory that it's not her in control, right? She's the one doing these things, sure, but there's, throughout the series, it's been hinted at that there's like some kind of exterior force, some power that's ultimately the one affecting and making all of this happen. So it'll be interesting to see how what she says in the next episode. So on top of the Wanda side of things, we also have thanks to hacker Darcy, we've got some new information that crossing into the Hex, right, is causing internal molecular, cellular changes in the body of the people who have gone through that threshold, right? Monica being the prime example. So it's safe to assume that everyone who who came in contact with the barrier of the Hex while it was being expanded are being affected in the same way. So, and among those people was, of course, there was a bunch of sword agents, but among those people was Darcy. Now, when this cellular molecular change was brought up, immediately what came to my mind was mutants. Monica Rambeau already has history of being a hero in the comics, so it's very well that she can go down that path to become Spectrum, or maybe even take up the role of Captain Marvel. Who knows? We'll see. But as far as everyone else, right, all those sword agents, Darcy, it could very well play out that they become the first mutants in the MCU. It's exciting to think. I like the thought of Darcy having more of a kind of a cemented role in the MCU. So that would be pretty cool to see. On top of that, it would be cool to see like what role she plays now that she's part of Westview, right? How she'll be integrated in there, if at all, right? Because the other thing that we saw is kind of the limitation of Wanda's powers in this episode. Vision is pretty much fully aware now of like the facade of what's going on here, and he takes advantage of the situation, right, to kind of be able to go out and explore and just see exactly how strong the effects of Wanda's powers, of the Hex, of everything that's going on inside, how it all works. With that investigation, we see that the farther he gets out of town, right, the town center where Wanda is, it seems that there's less and less control over the inhabitants of Westview. Vision's walking down the street, and there's still people moving, but they're just repeating their motions, right? They're not actually like living out their lives, right? They're just doing this kind of repeated back and forth. and he goes even deeper out, deeper out of the city limits, and eventually gets to a point where he reaches a cul-de-sac where everyone is just frozen still. They're not even moving, right? So we're finally being shown kind of the limitation to Wanda's powers, right? She did mention in the episode previous that obviously she's not controlling everyone. She's not like making everyone go about their day-to-days, and I guess she wasn't lying, right? She actually can't do that. She actually doesn't have the power to like control everyone. Only it seems that only the ones within their vicinity, right, are the ones that have kind of like are pertinent to the storyline, right, to their storyline as, you know, husband and wife in the suburbs. And everyone out in the outskirts, she just pretty much has to put on autopilot. And some of them, and the ones that are even more out there, she just has to put them on pause altogether. So it was pretty poignant. It was very creepy, especially the first one where it's the lady like hanging up the skeleton and she's just repeating it, and then the tear falls, and then it's just even made even more weird by the fact that like the music is still like that sitcom-y, like, you know, wacky music, you know, and you got this very strange situation. Later on with the ones that are just standing still, we do get more of an eerie music coming into play, so that, you know, that unsettling feeling does start to come into play. But man, overall, it's as always, this show just is doing a top-notch job of, you know, delivering that message of that feeling, that ambiance of thrill and suspense and kind of like mystery and like what's going on, right? Continuing on with Vision's investigation of what is going on exactly in Westview, he stumbles upon Agnes right at the city limits, on the border of Ellis Avenue. She makes Wanda herself makes a mention to the kids that they shouldn't go past that street, right? And we find ourselves at that very point where Agnes is just kind of frozen, right? She's very like, she's lost and out of it, and she's inside her car she says that she took a wrong turn, got lost, but of course that makes no sense. Vision snaps her out of it and she starts asking for help. She tells him he's an Avenger. He has no memory of that, of course, because everything prior to what is going on in Westview is not part of his memory anymore. And then she asks if she's dead because he's dead, and he doesn't know that. He takes that as a kind of shock, and then she keeps repeating it, "You're dead, you're dead, you're dead." This makes for a very creepy moment, but on top of that, I feel like it's very like unnatural, right, for someone, if Agnes really were you know, a victim of this whole situation. I really feel like she would have more of a reaction along the lines of I think his name was Norm, right? Vision's coworker, when he got him to snap out of the spell that he was under. He was very frantic, right? Right away, the first thing he wanted to do was contact his family. He was asking what was going on, but not Agnes. Agnes was it was a very strange situation. Yeah, I think this scene was thrown in there to kind of throw us off her trail, right? I was initially thinking that this pretty much confirms that she's not the one behind the wheel, right, controlling everything. But thinking about it a little bit more deeply, I'm kind of feeling like maybe this was just thrown in there to throw us off. As I mentioned in my last video, I made a pretty strong argument of how I think Agnes is pretty much the one behind everything. Throw up the link in the video to the card so you can check it out. I mentioned also how there was a moment in the trailers where she's in her 80s outfit, right? And the audio, she says, are you going to help us, right? While she's looking at Wanda. I think that same audio is from this episode, actually, right? So I think they took the audio from this episode where she's saying that same thing, are you going to help us, but to Vision. So they're definitely doing something there, like trying to throw us off some kind of trail. I thought it was going to be reserved only for the trailers and promo stuff, but I think they're doing it in the show too. I think this is something just to throw us off the trail, that Agnes is the one behind everything. And I stand firm with my thinking of that. Somehow, in regards to like how it all started, she's the key. She's definitely part of that. I think she's not alone, but yes, she's definitely a part of it. Continuing on with Vision, it's strange. I kind of feel like maybe right, if that, what was the purpose of that, right? If Agnes is in on it, I kind of what was the purpose of doing all that then? I think maybe she may have been trying to egg Vision on. I think she caught on to the fact that Vision was, starting to let on to figure out how things were working in Westview, and maybe she was trying to like use that to her advantage somehow, trying to like egg Vision on by saying like, please help us, kind of like egging on that thought that like he needs to be the hero, right, and try to help everyone out, and kind of get him to like explore further and go out to the edge of town and finally find the barrier of Westview and try to go past it, which by the way, it was confirmed that Vision, he's not having a good time once he goes out of there. It was really sad too, man. Wow, when he was like the parts like start ripping off of him and the music comes into play, man, I was getting a bit emotional at that point. It was beautifully done. Like you start, it was in that moment like you see like the production value as far as like the movie level production value as opposed to it being just a TV show. I love that scene right there. It was amazing. Thanks to Hacker Darcy, we also find out that Hayward is into some pretty secret business, right? He seems to have a tracking on Vision, and only he knows about it, right? So he's keeping an eye on Vision, but for what reason, we don't know. The fact that he has a tracking on him is not so much a surprise, granted, if we take into consideration the fact that Vision, his dead body was at Sword before Wanda got a hold of it and the whole Westview thing started. But it's the fact that he alone is the one that knows about that, right? That's kind of the suspicious thing. And then on top of that, the file that Darcy stumbled upon with the title Cataract. Now there's a whole new mystery behind that, behind Hayward's intentions. What's the deal? As far as that goes, I can't come up with much of a theory. I feel like it's just we don't have much to work with. I will say that I feel there has to be some kind of connection between Sword and what we saw in the extra after credit scenes from Spider-Man Far From Home with Nick Fury out in space chilling. If you think about it, Nick had met Maria, right? So while Nick was putting up the shield, right, and setting that up, he could have tasked Maria with setting up Sword, right? And now that shield has kind of served its purpose, that being to form the Avengers, right, as a group of heroes that would protect the Earth. Plus the fact that Maria has passed away after the events of Endgame, that may have been the moment where Nick Fury decided to head out to space, right? So I was starting to think it's a very weak theory. There's not like much substantial evidence to back it up, but I was starting to maybe play around with the thought of Hayward being a Skrull. But then you got like this whole like deep-rooted, like it feels like there's like this deep-rooted hatred towards like superheroes with Hayward. So I feel like a Skrull wouldn't really have that emotion unless they were kind of told to play that part, right? But at that point, I feel like it's getting too complicated. So it may very well not be the fact. It's just a thought, really. I really don't know what to make of Hayward. We'll just have to wait and see really how that plays out. Something else to point out with Hayward in particular was when Vision did come out of the Hex and he was, reaching out for help, he made a very strange comment as far as it was kind of like a comment of affirmation, right? Kind of like he is, right? Like, yeah, he does want out, right? So he does want out, kind of like a confirmation of something. Like he definitely knows something. I can't, but it's hard to put together at this moment. Moving on with let's talk about Pietro, right? I think it's a very obviously the big surprise, right, from last episode. And from what we saw this episode, it seems that this is very much the MCU Pietro, right? Just like with a different skin. He was just pretty much, as Darcy said, recast. He's bringing up memories of their past. In specific, he mentions when he was killed, right, by being shot. But at the same time, he seems to have this awareness of everything that's going on in Westview, right? The conversation he has with Wanda in particular when they're in the town square was very alarming. He kind of starts to break it down and ask about the children, right? That was one of the big points that Vision touched on in the last episode as to why there were no children around. So it feels that Wanda just kind of went heavy-handed on that in this episode and brought all the kids out, right, to kind of prove to Vision that, look, nothing funny is going on. But of course, Vision is at this point well past that point. But the fact that Pietro is bringing it up and he's asking like, what were you doing with the kids beforehand, right? Did you just leave them in bed? And he's saying things like, this is overall, I'm impressed. This is a big upgrade from what you were doing before. So this awareness is very interesting. It's strange because there is a part of him there. It's weird. It brings up so many questions as to like what exactly does he know all that because he got brought into the hex? Does he know that because of who he was brought into the hex by, right? Who was the one that brought him there? There was a lot of people theorizing from last week that it wasn't even Quicksilver altogether, that it was a disguise, right? That our, the baddie, the main person behind us, a lot of people presuming to be Mephisto, was using this as a disguise. And that would line up. That would actually line up with everything that we're seeing in this episode as far as the knowledge that he's inquiring about, right? It also feels that by asking all these questions, that he's trying to like kind of egg Wanda on. To what purpose, though? It kind of feels like that there's this, as far as Westview and everything that's going on, that there's kind of this well of untapped power that Wanda has access to, right? But it feels like she's not using it all. This is what I'm kind of coming to understand. And whoever's behind Pietro, whoever's behind everything that's going on, is pushing towards that moment where Wanda does finally grasp, I guess, take full control of this power. This actually leads perfectly into the commercial break, right? Which is probably one of the most enigmatic parts of the entire series, actually, up to this point, surprisingly. I say surprisingly because up to this point, the commercials have been very straightforward. They've made very direct references to things that we have seen in other MCU movies, but not this one. This one was very out there. When it happened, right, when it showed up, I was completely like, whoa, like what? And I rewinded and I watched again, but I just couldn't come up with any ideas. I watched some other reviews thinking that, okay, maybe it was just something that I wasn't aware of. Like it has to be referring to something, but I was actually shocked to find that nobody else really had a firm answer, right? People just pretty much had their theories as to what it was referring to. I have mine as well. I feel very, very good about this. I feel like it's pretty airtight, so hear me out. It's clear to see that all of these commercials have referred to a specific point in Wanda's story, right? The toaster from the first episode referring to Stark Industries, the bomb, right, that killed Wanda and Pietro's parents. The second episode, I believe, had the Sucker watch, right? That being a reference to the to Sucker from Age of Ultron, which was the one that was running the experiments on Pietro and Wanda for them to get their powers. The third episode, Hydra Soak, obviously Hydra. Fifth episode, the paper towels, referring to Lagos, the situation that played out at the start of Captain America Civil War, where she inadvertently caused the death of a lot of people, even though it wasn't her fault. So these were all things that were directly referring to moments in Wanda's life. So there's clearly a pattern. It's very clear to see that all of these commercials are referring to moments in Wanda's life, right? Probably things that have clearly marked her psyche. And I feel like the commercial for this episode is no different. The only difference being is that the moment that this commercial is referring to is a moment that we have yet to see in any MCU movie. The interaction that we see here between the shark, the starving boy on the island, I feel this is reenacting the exact moment at which Wandavision started. The beginning of the hex, right? The moment in which our villain represented by the shark, comes to Wanda, a starving child, right, in a desperate situation, and offers her the power, yo magic, the power that she needs to be able to create and bring into effect everything that we see currently playing out in Wandavision. Now the question is, when does this moment take place, right? It could very well have been after Endgame. I want to go a little bit crazier with my theory and say that it was actually after the events of Infinity War. If you may have remembered, during that year between the releases of Infinity War and Endgame, there was a lot of speculation going on as to what exactly was the whereabouts of everyone that got snapped, right? That got blipped out. Of course, a lot of people just took it for what it was, said that they were dead and gone, but there was a very good amount of people saying that that wasn't the case, that they were in fact not dead. They were instead in some kind of alternate reality, in some kind of other realm, right? A lot of people contributed this idea to the powers of the Soul Stone, considering that it was the only stone that we hadn't seen in any of the other MCU movies up to that point. So there was a lot of mystery behind the actual powers of the Soul Stone and what it was capable of doing. So let's say it's true. Let's say it's finally, this is confirmation coming that when the snap happened, right, when Thanos snapped his fingers, everyone faded away, that they were not in fact dead. In fact, they were actually transported to a different dimension, a different realm. And let's say that while Wanda spent her time in this realm, she encountered this being, right? The reason I want to say that this happened after the snap in Infinity War as opposed to after the big fight with Thanos in Endgame is because I feel like these emotions that Wanda explained, right, that feeling of loss, of hurt, of being alone, I feel like these would be more pertinent and more stronger after what happened at the end of Infinity War. Assuming that she did have consciousness after that moment, just think about it. She just lost the one that she loved, right? She lost the battle against the villain, right? Against the biggest bad guy there was. She must have felt horrible, much more horrible at that moment as opposed to after Endgame when they actually managed to defeat Thanos. Sure, Vision is still not around, but at that moment she had others there, right, to console her. We saw at the very end she had a conversation with Hawkeye. So I feel like how she was feeling after Endgame is not comparable to how she was feeling after what happened in Infinity War. The only crack in that theory is the fact that she's dead, obviously, right? So she can't feel anything. But what if this is the revelation that she wasn't actually dead? What if everyone that was affected by the snap wasn't actually killed, but instead just placed in this kind of limbo per se, right? This temporary existence. So she's in this new reality, and of course, this is when our big baddie stumbles upon her, right, and witnesses her power, what she's capable of, and the whole commercial plays out. Comes over, offers power, talks to her, tries to console her. She's obviously in very much distress after what happened. He offers her power to make her feel better, and she takes it. Now, the whole part of the commercial where the kid's not able to get the lid open and he ends up dying, which is very upsetting when I saw it, but regardless, and also the tagline at the end where it says the snack for survivors, right? I kind of feel like maybe she was provided this power, right, but she wasn't able to access it, right? She wasn't able to access it until she came back to life, right? After Endgame. So that's my theory. I know it's a little out there, but as far as I feel like I'm spot on with the fact that it does play out, that reenact the moment in which the villain does find Wanda and offer her the power. As far as the timing of it taking place after the snap in Infinity War, that's a bit of a stretch, but we'll see. If I'm right, I'll be hell excited though. That's pretty much it as far as the main points in the episode. There were some small things. Next episode should be very exciting because we finally get the revelation of who Monica's aerospace engineer friend is. Right at the very end of the episode, her and Jimmy went out to meet up with him in order to get the what Monica needs in order to be able to go back into the hex. So it'll be very exciting to see who that finally is, considering the fact that so many people are. There's a lot of hype going around at the moment, thinking that that person is going to be Reed Richards. So I found it really cool when Pietro and Wanda were talking in the town square. There was a mention of their parents, right? He said, I think mom and dad would really like this. As soon as he dropped that, I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God. Because this is what led to the introduction of Pietro, right? There was constant mentions of him throughout the first couple of episodes until eventually he popped up, right? So what if this is the same thing happening? What if this is the mention, right? And eventually will lead to the introduction of Magneto into the MCU. The fact that we see Pietro spending a lot of times with the kids as well. He's basically, other than that conversation in the town square, I believe he's just spending all their time with them. And while he's spending his time with the kids, they're developing their powers, right? Tommy develops speed powers just like his uncle, and at the very end of the episode we see Billy's telepathic abilities start to blossom as well. The fact that Pietro is spending so much time with the kids, it kind of feels like maybe he's trying to help and aid speeding up that process, right, of them developing their powers, kind of in the same sense where in the last episode we saw that Agnes was always there when the kids grew up. So it just adds to this idea that whoever is behind all of this is kind of feeding towards the development of the kids in as quick a time as possible so that they can ultimately get what they need. The theme for this episode was based around the 90s and early 2000s, we can say. The introduction being a riff off of Malcolm in the Middle, which is probably one of my favorite shows as a kid. Is super hilarious. So I love the way they went about it with the kids talking directly into the camera as well, kind of breaking the fourth wall, narrating what was going on in the show. It was brilliant. The costumes used throughout the episode was a very nice touch as well. We had seen through the promos that Wanda and Vision would show up in their say like the original, more comic accurate styled costumes, and I'd always wondered what was going to be the excuse for that, and I love the reasoning behind it. Her dressing up as a Sokovian fortune teller and him dressing up as a Mexican wrestler was hilarious. I love that. On top of that, we had Quicksilver show up in his classic getup, and Billy also dressed up in his comic book accurate costume as Wiccan. There was this very strange reference to Kick-Ass when Wanda and Pietro are talking as the kids are trick-or-treating, and Tommy says the word Kick-Ass, and then it kind of reverberates and Wanda repeats it, right? And they gave a lot of significance to the word Kick-Ass, right? Kick-Ass being a movie, came out quite some time ago, in which it does involve someone with superheroes, but in the movie itself, the actor that is playing Quicksilver, Evan Peters, shows up in that movie. And funny enough, the other Quicksilver, the first Quicksilver in the MCU, Aaron Taylor Johnson, also shows up in that movie. So I'm not sure if it was just a little nod to that movie, or if we go even deeper into this, we can maybe in the same sort of fashion where I think that everything that's playing out in WandaVision is in sitcom form, because Wanda spent a lot of her time watching sitcoms, right, as she was getting accustomed to life in the United States after the events of Age of Ultron. Maybe, let's say, Kick-Ass is a real movie in the MCU, and that Wanda saw this movie, and because of Kick-Ass, her seeing Evan Peters in that movie, that's how she got the image of him to be her brother. But then again, that would then bring up the question, the weird situation in which Wanda would be seeing her dead brother show up in a movie. So yeah, it doesn't work exactly, but it's just fun to think about. And that's that. Yeah, only 3 episodes left, which is crazy. My theory is that the next episode will be the Modern Family styled episode. And from there, everything will break down. I feel the last 2 episodes are just going to be outside of the whole sitcom theme that's been played out thus far. And we're gonna start to see those weird images that we've seen of Wanda and some of the promos start to be presented. And I feel like the last 2 episodes in particular are gonna get really extra weird, and I'm super excited for it. So as always, let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment. Let me know what your theories are, what you thought of my theories, especially the commercial. I feel really good about that one, so let me know what you think about that one. As always, like, subscribe. We'll be back next week with another episode review. As always, I'm putting out other videos as well, gaming content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.